Great pleasure. Very great pleasure. We bring back Mr. James Blair, Senior Political Advisor to President Trump. There he is. James, thank you for coming on. I don't know. You heard the riff. I think there's a lot of good ammo out there. You're going to rev up the president and give his full attention to the midterms. It's still early yet, a couple months away. Democrats have a lot to answer for, and the Republicans, I think, have a bunch of things to be very proud of, James.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And it's great to be back. Look, there's a clear contrast between mainstream Republicans and the extreme liberal Democrats that we're running against in this midterm. And just what's happened in the last year and a half is a contrast enough, never mind what's going forward. The American people are going to have a choice. They're going to choose between the party that tried to raise taxes by $4 trillion, which was the Democrats, that would have raised taxes on 80% of Americans, not just the rich, 80% of Americans, almost everybody, or they're going to vote for the party that cut taxes by $4 trillion in the last year and a half, and that's the Republicans, obviously. They're going to be with the party who banned institutional investors from buying homes and competing with Main Street home buyers. That was the Republicans in this Congress, or the Democrats who have talked about it, but they've never gotten it done. They're going to choose between the Republicans who are, again, mainstream, who want to deport the criminals, particularly get the violent criminals out of our country first, and continue to get the illegal immigrants that Biden and the Democrats let in for the last 4 years out. Or they'll choose the Democrats, who just today, I think, the Democrat National Committee, the news came out, took the official position that it is the official position of the National Democratic Party to not have any immigration enforcement in this country. And we know that because Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer and all of them voted in this Congress repeatedly to shut down all immigration enforcement in this country, as in have none, deport nobody. Not the rapists, not the murderers. So this is really, again, a split screen of the extreme liberal Democrats versus the mainstream Republicans. And I think we're going to be successful in November as we take that message to the American people.
Yeah, and there's a lot of amnesia in the Democrats or in the Democratic Socialists of America. But one of the amnesia, Mr. Jeffries, Hakeem Jeffries, he said he's never in favor of Medicare for all, but actually a few years ago, he co-sponsored it 2 years running. Now he's saying he's never opposed to it. And you see AOC and others saying, well, this was just woke one, but now we're on to something different than woke two. They have to be held accountable, don't they, James?
Absolutely, they do. Look, the message of the Republican Party is you earned your money, you should keep it, you should decide what to do with it. The message of the Democrat Party is we get to take more and more of your money and we decide what to do with it. We'll give it to somebody else. And that's what the Democrats are proposing. They're saying they will continue to tax you, raise your costs, take money out of your pocket, and pay for whatever they see fit. Whereas the Republicans think you should keep the money that you earned and you should choose what to do with that, whether that's in taxes with tax cuts, whether that's in health care. We want to get rid of the subsidies to big insurance companies. The Democrats have been lining the big insurance companies' pockets for years. And the insurance company stocks have gone up 1,000% in the last 10 years, all because of government subsidies. What we want is to give that money to the people and let the people decide what they're going to do with it, what health care they want to buy. This is, again, it's about personal choice, which is what the Republicans are offering, or government choice, government run everything, which is what the Democrats and the rise of the far left Democrats are proposing.
So one important piece of affordability, I think, is the plunge in prescription drug prices under Trumpian policies, which have changed. All right, they're down over 3% year on year. I think it's 3.5%. And not one single month have seen those drug prices rise since President Trump's second term began. Not one single month. That is a huge thing. I mean, Democrats can talk about affordability, James, but it was Mr. Biden and his big government socialism, 21.4% cumulative rise in consumer prices. I mean, again, you have a contrast, and again, they may have amnesia about this, but you'll hold them accountable, I presume.
100%, and you're right, it was Biden. I mean, people do have amnesia, but it's important to remind them. This time 4 years ago, Democrats were in charge of the White House and both chambers of Congress, and inflation was over 8%. That was the case last time they were in charge. Fast forward, we've been in charge a year and a half, and you just saw the largest drop in prescription drug prices, I think, since 1963. Okay, it's not been done in the modern era. And that is explicitly a President Trump and Republican-led policy that has led to that. And we could go down the list. The Treasury just came out. I think there was $48 billion or something like that in more tax refunds that have been given out in the last couple of months than the year before. And that's money back in people's pocket that they earned. That's $48 billion back in the pocket of the American people. And it's their money. So again, the Democrats are the ones that created the mess that we are digging out of with inflation, with high prices. They created it, and we just need a little time to finish the job. And that's what we're really asking for in November. Let us finish the job.
Let us finish the job. That's a good phrase. So, James, let me make a pitch to you. You probably know what it might be on tax reform. I don't want really middle-class people. 74% of people who paid the capital gains tax were making $200,000 or less. That's in today's Wall Street Journal editorial. And we've been talking on this show quite a bit about, indexing for inflation. Why make people pay Biden's inflation tax on capital gains? Income taxes are already indexed. So indexing capital gains and also exempting larger amount of capital gains if you sell a home, for example. And a lot of people, investors would be benefited, homeowners would be benefited. Grover Norquist dialed in the other day and said, the crypto crowd would benefit from this also. So how about inflation indexing cap gains? How about raising the exemption on cap gains if you sell a home?
Yeah, I won't get ahead of the president and what he ultimately announces in terms of new policy ideas one way or another on taxes or anything else. But I do think you'll see more ideas as we close down the stretch here of the midterm elections. But certainly as Republicans, we are in favor of letting people keep more of their hard-earned money. And particularly, we're focused on the working and middle class. These are the people that have been hurt the hardest by Joe Biden and the Democrats' inflation. They're the people that are working hard, playing by the rules, not committing crimes, trying to get a leg up in this country, which is the American dream. That's the American bargain. If you play the game the right way and you work hard, you should get a leg up. And anything that helps achieve that is something that we're interested in.
Well, I'm sure you're going to go to him and tell him that Kudlow wants indexing capital gains, and it's a terrific idea, sir. I'm absolutely convinced that you're going to do that. I got a smile out of here. One last one. The Democratic Socialists purport to be representing the working class. Actually, the surveys show they don't have any working class support. What has happened, last point, is manufacturing jobs and goods producing jobs and construction related jobs and their wages have gone up significantly under Mr. Trump. James, I think that's a very good talking point for working folks, because President Trump does very well with working folks. The GOP should do very well with working folks.
Absolutely. Look, for all the self-professed socialist leaders in this country, I really wish they would lead by example. Last time I checked, Bernie Sanders is a multimillionaire with multiple homes. I think Abdul El Sayed won't release his full finances, but we know he's made a lot of money in the multi-millions of dollars and has multiple homes. These are champagne socialists. It's very easy to talk about the working class when you yourself are rich. And that's really what we're seeing. You see wealthy Democrats who have lined their pockets by being connected to the political process in all of these cases, and then coming out and telling actual working people that we should get more of your money and we should decide what to do with that. Republicans just don't agree with it. So I think they should lead by example. They should give up all of their assets and give them to people who need them more.
I don't think so. But anyway, free enterprise beats socialism. I think that's the ultimate choice in this election. And I'm confident President Trump will make the case. James Blair, thank you very much for coming back on. We appreciate it.